Welcome. The hearing will come to order. In April of 2013, I held the Senate's first and to date the only hearing on the nation's use of drone strikes to lethally target suspected terrorists overseas. At the time, I was troubled by stories of innocent people being killed by these strikes, as well as the potential for these strikes to violate the law and undermine our national security, with very little transparency and accountability. In the 9 years since that 2013 hearing, the watchdog group Air Wars estimates that as many as 10,000 to 30,000 more civilians have been killed by U.S. coalition strikes. These are not just numbers, these are real people. They include a little girl, 11 years old, in a new purple dress sitting down to dinner with her family, a wife as she slept next to her husband, a young boy playing soccer, a father and daughter sitting in their car, a young man outside an ice cream shop, a baby in her mother's arms. To start the hearing, I'd like to turn to a video to show the hidden cost of some of these strikes.
Request permission to engage with intent to conduct a smash.
I had just checked my daughter to see if she is asleep. There was a terrible smell in the air. My back has been injured. My left foot had broken. My bed was in a V shape, which resulted in a break to my hip. I looked to the left at my wife, and all I could see was debris. And I started shouting her name, Mayada, Mayada. She did not answer me. I started shouting at my daughter, Tuqa, no answer. I could hear a female sound, and then when I started shouting at her, it was my sister-in-law, Azza, and she said, Bassem, everybody's gone. I felt that I was in a nightmare.
Bob Yates thinks that signature strikes are out of hand, that they need to be reined in. There's no judicial process involved, that there is this kill list.
In addition to the moral and legal issues involved in drone strikes, there's a policy issue here about whether it's effective.
William Webster, who was not only a federal judge, but also CIA director, and others really claim that no matter if it works or not, it is against who we are as a people and against every value that we hold dear.
This is not an issue we can kill our way out of.
You cannot kill your way out of this.
You can't kill your way out of this. That's a mistake.
Our nation is at a turning point. In the months after 9/11, we strayed from our values, engaging in torture and indefinite detention at Guantanamo, which continues. We also began conducting lethal strikes in unprecedented ways. It has now been more than 20 years since 9/11. We have ended the war in Afghanistan, the longest war in our history. Let me be clear, the world continues to face challenges from terrorism. Terrorists operate in failed states and ungoverned spaces. They do not wear uniforms, distinguish themselves from civilians, or otherwise follow the laws of war. We cannot ignore this reality and this threat. I want to commend the Biden administration for the recent mission against ISIS leader Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi al-Qurashi. Rather than a drone strike, the administration deployed ground sources that put our brave service members at risk. But it was an effort to minimize civilian casualties. Al-Qurashi nonetheless detonated a suicide bomb that unnecessarily killed innocent people. This is a reminder of the challenges we face in addressing war and threats from non-state actors who don't follow any rules of war. But as we grapple with these challenges, we have to ensure that the policies governing our response are grounded in the rule of law and respect for human rights. We also must be mindful that in at least 39 countries in the world today, we have armed drones, including North Korea, China, and Russia. So we could be establishing precedents that other nations will follow. Let me be careful, I think I misstated that. We might mindful that at least 39 countries in the world today are believed to have armed drones, including North Korea, China, and Russia. And we must make sure that over the long term, we are actually addressing the root causes of extremist threats instead of prolonging them indefinitely. Our Constitution is clear. Only Congress has the power to decide when the nation goes to war. As the Commander-in-Chief, the President must act within that Constitution's boundaries. 20 years ago, Congress authorized the use of force against those responsible for 9/11. In 2001, the authorization for use of military force, AUMF, has been stretched by successive presidents far beyond what I and many of my colleagues who joined in voting for it ever imagined. It has been used as the legal basis for strikes in more than half a dozen different countries and against just as many different groups, including groups that did not even exist when Congress voted to pass the AUMF. I and many of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle have long urged the Congress to take its responsibility seriously and revisit the outdated AUMF. Even when authorized by Congress, the use of lethal force against non-state actors raises complex legal questions that only become more complicated with dramatic advances in AI weapons. International law recognizes that lethal force against terrorists is sometimes necessary and lawful to address imminent threats to life or to target combatants during war. The President also has the authority under the Constitution to defend the nation from sudden attack, as was reaffirmed by the War Powers Act resolution of 1973. But successive administrations have dangerously expanded these legal authorities. The Obama administration took tentative steps to limit the use of lethal force, but the Trump administration issued its own set of weaker standards. Through it all, 20 years and 4 administrations, the Department of Justice legal analysis permitting these lethal strikes has remained shrouded in secrecy. The Biden administration has also rightfully sought to restore American leadership on human rights. To do so, it should improve its lethal force policies. The executive branch also must address systemic problems that for 2 decades have routinely led to erroneous targeting of innocent civilians. In addition to doing more to prevent these mistakes in the first place, we must ensure that erroneous strikes are followed by appropriate investigations and accountability, including redress to the victims and families. Following a series of New York Times investigations revealing systemic flaws in the Department of Defense, that the Department of Defense mitigates and tracks civilian casualties, Secretary Austin issued a memorandum directing the department to develop a civil harm action plan within 90 days. The memo also comes in response to a recent study mandated by Congress, which found the Department of Defense is, quote, not adequately organized or resourced to sufficiently assess, reduce, and respond to civilian harm incidents. At this point, I'd like to turn to Ranking Member Grassley for his opening remarks.